Hello, and welcome to the podcast where friends discuss environmental policies from around the planet. Hello, and welcome back to another Extra Policy episode of the Planet Policy Pals. I'm Ala, and I'm here with Ajwa. Hey girl, hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm surviving. You guys, we pre-record these extra policies, and because we want to have a break, we'll do like quite a few of them at once, so I'm surviving.
Don't blame you.
I hope everybody's doing okay as we get into this fall season. Hope you guys are excited for Halloween.
I really am.
Yeah. There's only two good holidays, Halloween and Easter.
Okay.
Because they're the shortest.
How sad.
So today we are going to talk about a topic that is very dear to my heart, and we're going to talk about the landmark case of Shell Oil Company versus the Niger Delta. We'll touch a little bit on just the general conditions of oil exploration in the Niger Delta, but we're going to focus on that landmark decision. This policy comes to us from me. I was a very intense child, you guys. And so very early on in my life, and I think we talked about this on episode 0 of what motivated me to get into the environmental space. And it was this story. It was this destruction. It's been going on since before I was born, since 1990 something, when I was a child. So it's a serious one, you guys. The Niger Delta region is a very eco-diverse area in southern Nigeria, and it's home to approximately 30 million people. Now, not every aspect of the Niger Delta is affected by oil exploration. I just want to be clear that most of the oil in Nigeria is mostly in River State, where I'm from, and Bayelsa. It affects those people there. We also have like a lot of marine life there. It's like super diverse marine wise, which is why we have great seafood. I don't know why I'm doing a plug for my home right now, but whatever. And
I love it.
And there's a lot of critically endangered animals there, including the Dama gazelle, the pygmy hippo. Fun fact, I cannot say the full word.
Allah, please try.
Okay. The pygmy hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus.
Hippopotamus. Oh, I did it!
There we go, you did it. Yay!
And there's record. Okay. And we have chimpanzees and a bunch of other animals. So yeah, it's a very important region, and it's just not getting what it should be getting right now. So the whole oil situation has been going on, like I said, for decades, and I'm going to let Ajwa explain a little bit about the history, and then we'll get into this landmark case.
So oil was first found in Nigeria in 1956, which was, at that point, it was still a British protectorate. And it was by a joint operation between the Royal Dutch Shell and British Petroleum. Of course, when there's a mess, it's them too. The two began production in 1958, and they were soon joined by a host of other foreign oil companies in the 60s after the country gained independence, and shortly after it fell into civil war.
And you guys, this episode is coming out, I think, like 2 weeks after our independence. All these years, we have literally been dealing with this shit since before independence, and we are still dealing with it. It's not right.
Yep. So this rapidly expanding oil industry was, of course, like Allah said, always just dogged in controversy. It was with criticism that its financial proceeds were being exported or lost in corruption, instead of helping the millions that were living on $1 a day in the Niger Delta. Or they didn't even use it to reduce its impact on the local environment. Nope. So in the 1970s, there was a major spill in Ogoniland in the south of Nigeria, which led to thousands of gallons being spilled on farmlands and rivers, and it ultimately led to a £26 million fine for Shell in Nigerian courts 30 years later. According to the Nigerian government, there were more than 7,000 spills between 1970 and 2000. So, yeah. Shell alone has reported around 1,010 spills since 2011. And Eni, which is an Italian company, also operating, one of the major ones, also operating in the Niger Delta region, have had 820 spills since 2014, according to Amnesty International.
And if you live in Nigeria, you might know Eni by Ajip, because it's the same company, just so you know.
Yeah. So among these reports, it found that 89, which had reasonable doubts surrounding the cause provided by the oil companies. So yeah, we don't know what was doing this.
Yeah, and what that is like they argue that it's a long mix of socio-economical, political things, but they argue that a lot of the oil spills are due to like illegal oil bunkering and interference by local communities. And partially that is true, but considering how long this has been going on, and this has been going on way before illegal oil bunkering was ever a problem in the Niger Delta, most of the blame is on them. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So let's do a timeline for when it started and what happened. So in 1936, the Shell Group, they established a Nigerian venture with the precursor company of BP PLC. First shipment of oil from Nigeria takes place in 1958. In April of 1973, Nigerian government takes a stake in the venture, and over the coming years, the government increases its stakes and British Petroleum exits eventually. So in 1979, the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria is established, and it incorporates assets of the older Shell BP consortium. And now over time, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation comes to own 55%, and Shell owns 30%. France's Total owns 10%, and Italy's Eni owns 5%. Shell still remains the operator.
Isn't it crazy that Eni owns 5% and they have like one of the largest percentage of oil spills?
Yeah, man. Apparently, and Italy doesn't even care. Like, Italian courts, they acquitted them. But, yeah. In 1990, the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, it was led by firebrand environmental rights activist Ken Saro-Wiwa. And if you guys remember, Ala actually talked about him a lot in her intro episode. She's obsessed, guys.
Yes, he's one of my greatest inspirations in life. And he was illegally killed because of this oil spill.
So, it's a really sad story. But anyway, he starts campaigning for a fair share of oil wealth for the Ogoni people that were living on oil fields and provided compensation for environmental damage. In January of 1993, this movement organizes protests of around 300,000 Ogoni people against Shell and oil pollution, and Nigeria's military government occupies the region. So in April of 1993, that same year, Shell forms Shell Nigeria Exploration and Production Company Limited, which signs production sharing contracts to develop offshore oil and gas interests.
Vertical integration.
By the end of that year, Shell ceases production in Ogoniland. So that was a little bit of a win there. In November of 1995, Saro-Wiwa and 8 other of the movement's leaders are executed by Sani Abacha's military government on alleged murder charges. Of course, like Ala said, very terrible. And Nigeria is now suspended from the Commonwealth.
Which is not even a real punishment.
Yeah, it's like, oh, thank you, more of our independence.
Like, Abacha was like, okay, sure.
So in the late 1990s, over time, Shell's focus, it shifts to offshore exploration, where it obviously enjoyed better margins and fewer threats of attack by militants. By October 2003, Shell Corporation pumps more than 1 million barrels of oil per day.
That's crazy.
In 2005, Shell starts production at the giant Bonga offshore field. And in 2006, the militant group Movement for the Emancipation of the Niger Delta emerges, and it begins to attack Shell facilities.
Actually, I do remember this. Like, this was a very violent time in Rivers State. And, like, I had been living in Lagos, and this was around when midway through my secondary school, and I was in, that's like just when I moved from middle to high school. And I'd been going to school in Rivers State since my family's originally from there. And it was a violent time in the States. Very chaotic.
So like the earlier movement, it sought a great share of oil wealth for the Delta's people, and they wanted remediation for oil spills, but they did not do it nicely like the movement did.
And neither of them were successful, this is a very controversial thing to say, but MEND, which again, it was a very chaotic time, and I'm not saying I support what they did, but after them, like, more people cared about it and actually made efforts than they did before. And Mossop was more public because Ken Saro-Wiwa was murdered, and still the international world did very little. So,
yeah. Now, the Shell Corporation had its pump stations and platforms in the area being attacked, and their production, of course, falls. In 2008, there were two large oil spills, which were a result of operational faults, and it hit the community of Bodo in Ogoniland in the Niger Delta region. Tens of thousands of barrels of oil were spilled during this time. By January 2010, the Shell Corporation sold some of its onshore fields and said that it no longer is looking for Nigeria for growth. They at least halted growth, which was, I guess, a good thing. By April 2011, in April 2011, Shell and Eni, they acquired an oil production license, which was a large offshore field for $1.1 billion from this local company called Malibu. By August 2011, a UN report criticized Shell and the Nigerian government for contributing to 15 years of pollution in Ogoniland, which it said needed the world's largest oil cleanup, and it costed an initial $1 billion, and it took up to 30 years.
But that was what they projected would happen, or what it would cost and how long it would take, which does not look likely at this point.
Yeah, so that was their projection. By March 2012, there was a group of 11,000 Nigerians from Bodo, Ogoniland that launched a suit against Shell at the London High Court, and they sought tens of millions of dollars in compensation for the 2008 oil spills. So, they picked one battle and tried to fight it instead of just going for the whole war, which I think was a really smart thing, because you gotta, break them up and fight it. And now there's attention to it. Now they've taken it to international courts, the fact that it went to London. Now Allah's going to tell us what happened in these courts and how did the ruling go.
So yeah, it's actually crazy. The people of Niger Delta have fought oil companies in Nigeria, England, Italy, and the Netherlands. So it's been everywhere. And like Ajwa mentioned, after that report in 2011, they set up a government agency to clean up the land and water. It's called the Hydrocarbon Pollution Remediation Project. And it was supposed to be also partially funded by Shell, mostly. But that project has not seen much progress since then. In 2015, the oil giant Shell agreed to a £55 billion, that's $83 million, payout to compensate 15,600 people in Bodo after that oil spill. And now that's the one that Ajwa mentioned happened in England. Even though they accepted the liability in court, they still have not paid out the full amount as of this recording. And the community had originally asked for £300 million because if you'll remember, the UNEP said that the entire cleanup would cost $1 billion. But Shell only offered £30 million before this ruling, where they got a little more. And then, of course, in 2010, they challenged that ruling about the Ogoni oil spills. That is the biggest one, the original one that they have refused to take ownership for. Just this year, in fact, 2021, lawyers for the company and the affected communities on August 11 finally confirmed the decision by the Nigerian subsidiary of Royal Dutch Shell on compensation of $100 million. And then the company has somehow managed to keep saying that the spills were caused by third parties during the civil war in Nigeria. Because if you'll recall, that spill did happen around our civil war. But even the courts don't agree with them, so I don't know. Dutch courts found them guilty of direct involvement, though. And this particular case, like I said, is the most famous one because it has been going on since 1991, before I was born, and way before Ajwa was born.
You say way before? Girl, all right.
And then there was another court case in Italy, where 9 current and former executives and contractors were accused of taking bribes to secure a license. And I'm going to talk about that a little more in a second. So, of course, this whole thing has had huge environmental impacts on oil communities. Over the last half century, as many as 10 million barrels of oil have been spilled across the country. If you want to put that in perspective, think of the Exxon Valdez oil spill, That's a big catastrophe. We all know about that catastrophe. Every single year for the last 50 years, if you had an Exxon Valdez oil spill, every single year, that is what Nigeria's Niger Delta region has had spilled by Shell and all these other oil companies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So obviously from these oil spills, we've had air, land, water, everything has been contaminated. They've even done studies showing how it directly affects residents' health and livelihoods. And the thing is, like, a lot of these regions used to be farmland. They used to be areas people used to fish. They used to be a little more rural. And now it's just like they displaced millions of people from there. Vast areas of the waterways and the mangrove swamps, which I said is super diverse, have been destroyed or put at risk. The farmland is covered in oil. In fact, like in some places when you walk and you step your foot, you can see the oil literally rise up from the ground.
Oh, wow. Really? That's insane.
Yeah, and I've seen it. Like, I'm not making that up. It's not something I've read. It's something I've seen. Of course, there's gas flaring, which just... The gas flaring that's done by these companies in Nigeria is not the same kind of way that they do it here. We don't have a lot of air. We don't have air pollution monitoring stations that work. So it's really hard to determine how much is being set off by those flares. So they kind of just run with it. Research has found that people living near the pollution sites are exposed to elevated levels of things like chromium, lead, mercury, and they found these in their bloodstream, which of course can lead to everything from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer, diabetes, kidney damage. Like, people are dying. This is not just, just the environment, but like we always see on this show, affecting the environment affects people. You know what I mean? They're connected.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, also, there's an increase in child mortality. Even as a kid, like, when we would go by boat, when we travel by boat around, you could see the clear distinction between the mangrove forest that was so, like, sort of thriving and the ones that were totally dilapidated. Like I said, you can see that oil like a sheen on top of the mangrove swamps and forests. And it was just really sad. Approximately 26% of the mangrove forests in Nigeria were lost as of 2018. So where are we now, and where is this going? That's the thing, right? I don't know where it's going, you guys. I do not think it's going somewhere good. I have to keep it 100 with you, because Nigeria, like, we have had corrupt governments for a very long time. I want to say since military rule, but even the military ones were corrupt. So, like, bruh. The country's official audit in 2014 alone revealed $19 billion worth of oil revenues just went missing. You guys, they just disappeared.
What do you mean disappeared?
They're missing, Ashwa.
That's a lot of money.
I don't know what to tell you. And this was directly involving the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, which is supposed to be a government entity, but I don't even know what they do there. I'm just going to say it. Some Nigerians are going to listen to this. They're going to get mad. Most Nigerians are going to agree with me and be like, yes. And yes, these people are useless. It's ridiculous. And you remember those bribes we told you about? The person that testified on those bribes was this man named Emeka Obi. He was the middleman in the situation where Eni and Shell paid $1.1 billion in bribes. I can't even picture that amount of money just for bribes alone.
Wow. They could... $1.1 billion? Isn't that what they said was needed for the cleanup? Couldn't they just do that?
Like, I'm just like, you guys, they didn't even give up to $1 billion for cleanup, but they paid it in bribes. So I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm tired. So
they just wanted to do it illegally. That's it. Like, that was it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just about profit. Royal Dutch Shell has announced that it will be leaving Nigeria, just with the entire shit show that has gone on. But it's still unclear what they're going to do about remediation of the spills, so I don't even know how that's going to happen. Recently, Nigeria passed the Petroleum Industry Bill, so now it's the Petroleum Industry Act, and that thing has been in works for like 2 decades. 2 decades they've been working on this bill, the Nigerian government, man.
2 decades they've been working on a single bill?
Girl, because nobody can agree. It's like been an argument for 2 decades through different like government or like regimes.
Oh, that's like the domestic violence bill in Pakistan.
Oh my God.
They can't agree. Yeah, it's never mind. It's makes me so sad.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Still hasn't passed, by the way.
Of course. Hopefully soon. And hopefully when they pass it, they won't do to it what they did to this bill, because this bill is It has a lot of issues. So the point of the bill is that they're trying to deal with Nigeria's uncompetitive production costs, above average carbon intensity, and inefficient refineries. Honestly, they should have just said mostly not working refineries, not inefficient, if we're keeping it 100. And Nigeria just can't continue to rely on oil in the future. The rest of the world isn't. Why should we? Most of our public and private debt is indexed on oil prices. And oil prices, they do what they do, bruh. So I don't know. So yeah, it has put the country in a compromised position. So that's the point of this bill, is to kind of change how Nigeria deals with its energy sector. And they're trying to diversify away from oil, which sounds great. However, the bill does not adequately address climate change, the Paris Agreement, or the energy transition. They don't say exactly how they will be shifting away from oil. The one good thing from the bill is that there's structural reforms to create a clear separation of power between NMPC, who I said, in my opinion, is useless, and the regulatory agencies that govern them. Because before, they were all under the same thing. How can you be governed by yourself? You can't be your own police. What is this, America? Okay. You can't find yourself guilty and be like, based on my investigation, no. So apart from the lack of foresight with the whole climate change situation, the bill doesn't really improve the lives of Niger deltas in Nigeria. So in my opinion, it takes away power from them because of something in the PIA that talks about host communities. So before, host communities used to be defined as places where oil was produced, which is not that many places in Nigeria, right? But now it's any state that oil pipelines pass through. And one of the biggest contentions that made this bill hard to pass in the first place has always been about this. Who gets the money from the oil? Because it mostly doesn't go to the communities that are devastated by the oil. And I'm not saying where pipelines exist shouldn't get some money, but if you're splitting it equally, that means the places getting a lot of damage are just not getting as much as they need. So by this definition, all communities in the Niger Delta and Lagos are now host communities. Compensation to these communities right now stands at $2 million. That's 820 million naira per local government per annum. And one local government can have up to 20 communities within it. So for damaged areas like Egebiri, Oloibiri, Eche, Boni, Kana, Ekere-Kana, all of these in Rivers State and Bayelsa State, this amount is going to do very little to protect them. But the places that have pipelines near them where there's a very low chance of them even seeing the effects of this oil spills, those places are going to continue to get money. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that concludes my latest rants about Nigeria. So anyway, I want to highlight an organization you guys can check out. There's actually a lot of great organizations that are working to help. I know we've talked about Mangrove Expo on this podcast, episode 6, I believe it was, if you want to check that out. But the Youths and Environmental Advocacy Center is an NGO in Nigeria that tries to raise awareness among young people regarding the environment and just the condition of the Niger Delta. They do seminars, school visits, engaging activities, and just try to get the community involved. They also do work in communities around river states. As far as I don't know, what do you guys think? Because the only audience question I can ask you guys out there right now is, after all this that we've said, what's going on in your countries? Are you from an oil producing nation? Are you from a community that has been affected? Do you know someone from a community that has been affected? We're both from countries that have suffered from the fallouts from oil exploration, especially when nobody wants to take responsibility. So thank you guys for joining us on this last extra policy discussion for this almost break. Next week, we're going to be diving into the London fog and the impact of policy on air pollution. It's going to be a good one. We're pretty excited. Yeah, so Series 3 is picking up in a week, back with full episodes, show notes, references, all that good stuff. Follow us on Twitter, Planet Policy Pal, Instagram, Planet Policy Pals, like our Facebook page, and, message us or whatever. Also, check us out on Good Pods. We're being more active on there now. And if you search on the science category, we should be there. We're not high up, guys, so we're trying to get high up. Please like us, review us, rate us. And until next time, keep learning, pals.